Look, our lives have been changed and challenged by the coronavirus, but could this pandemic offer opportunities? My next guest believes so. Dr. Mamphela Ramphele, co-founder of Reimagine SA, says the COVID-19 crisis offers South Africans multiple opportunities to tackle the unfinished agenda of transforming our society. What does she mean by this? Well, let's find out. Dr. Ramphele joins us now live. Doctor, always a pleasure having you on this program. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, and good morning to your listeners.
So the goal, a more equitable, resilient and prosperous democracy. I guess that's what we're all aiming for. But do you see the COVID-19 crisis as a bit of a conduit for achieving those targets?
Absolutely, because in 1994, we committed to exactly that goal of an equitable, non-racial, prosperous democracy, but we dropped the ball. And the reason was that we simply continued to govern in ways that, in sad ways, reflected the values of the system we're coming from. Just look at our cities. Look at how poor people continue to be put on the periphery of our cities with very minimal services. Look at our towns, rural towns. Many of them have just simply collapsed. And the reason is that we have adopted the colonial model of governance where power, privilege, and all the major services are in the city centers.
Yeah.
Now with COVID-19, it became very clear that not only are poor people going to suffer from the consequences of not having the water to wash their hands every 20 seconds as was prescribed for public health purposes. How can you social distance in an environment of shacks where people are living so overcrowded?
Yeah.
And we have also seen the horrors of water and sanitation infrastructure that has simply collapsed because we have not renewed our infrastructure since the dawn of democracy.
No doubt.
And I'm talking about infrastructure.
Yeah. No doubt that COVID-19 has, I guess, amplified or highlighted the triple threat that we talk about. We're talking about unemployment, inequality, etc., poverty. I want to talk about leadership, Dr. Ramphele. You know, during this time of crisis, you are an academic, you're a businesswoman, as well as a political thinker. So you're looking at this leadership from many different angles. During this time of crisis, would you say our politicians are stepping up to the plate? Because the pushback and the criticism often leveled against politicians is that for far too many, far too often, they act out of fear of consequences rather than out of good conscience.
Well, I think it is very impressive to see how President Ramaphosa has stepped up to the plate. He was regarded as being very cagey, but he brought out his strong leadership capacity, his ability to engage across the society in terms of making sure that people come along with him. But what is clear is that the business as usual pre-COVID cannot cut it, because the urgency of the moment to repair precisely those things that should have been part of the reconstruction and development post-1994. We have seen President Ramaphosa actually practicing consequence management for the first time in post-apartheid South Africa. We have seen ministers being held up to be accountable. We have seen public servants being held to account. And of course, the Zondo Commission is laying bare the level of impunity in our public services. But it is not only the public service, the private sector. Think of Steinhoff. I mean, we have seen people now arrested in terms of VBS. We are waiting to see people being arrested in terms of Steinhoff, because public money in the form of money from the PIC was lost in that corruption of Steinhoff. And so the leadership that's required in this time of crisis is courage, is visionary, is inclusive, and it is being able to keep hope alive in people. And that, I think, President Ramaphosa is succeeding in doing. But I'm also pleased to see that in the private sector, there are leaders who are stepping up to the plate, who are doing more than just simple CSI and charitable works, but are saying, how do we engage with government and civil society to have dignified, sustainable social housing? So I'm very excited that at long last, our complacency watching poverty, inequality, and unemployment destroy the lives of so many, particularly young people, seems to be coming to an end. People are now stepping up to the plate. And I'm waiting with bated breath to hear what the recovery plan from President Ramaphosa is going to be on Thursday in Parliament. Because that will be a signal whether or not our leaders in the public sector, in partnership with those in the private and in civil society, are really rising to the opportunities to build up a better society than the one we've been trying to do for the last 26 years.
In the president's plan tomorrow. But we're asking our viewers this morning with regards to what sort of extraordinary measures should be put in place in order to have the sustainable economic growth and recovery plan. Let's throw that question to you. If you were advising the president, what would you say to him?
I would say to the president, this is the time to invest in social and physical infrastructure. This is the time to transform our cities into smart cities, the time to leverage information technology to be able to develop innovative interventions that will address not only the issues of poverty, but also create wonderful opportunities for young entrepreneurs to bring into our economic system the kind of nimbleness, the kind of bottom-up, community-based development that will bring people who are living on the periphery of our cities, the so-called informal sector, which is actually the major sector of our economy, the major sector that is keeping people alive. That sector needs to be invested in, it needs to be encouraged. And young people, the millions of the unemployed young people have got wonderful creative ideas. Let's bring them into the infrastructure build. Let's train them. Let's give them opportunities to maintain the infrastructure. We have a habit of building and not maintaining. And that is a missed opportunity for job creation. Building
and not maintaining. You speak about the various sectors that can play a role. What about corporates? Look, as a country, we are still grappling with issues such as racism, such as inequalities, such as sexism. Corporates, they have the potential of playing a leading role, one would say, in addressing these issues. What's the best possible route that they can take in order to strengthen socio-political and economic conditions?
The important role of corporates is to, first of all, accept that they are citizens as individuals, and corporates are themselves citizens because they are enjoying the fruits of being South Africans. Now, what we need to do is to move away from corporate social investment as a charitable post-profit engagement. Let's make the business of business the engagement with stakeholders at community level, their workers, the young people, not as charitable engagements, but as part and parcel of business. Let's take the case of the financial sector. Imagine if the financial sector were to work hand in hand with the education sector to enable financial literacy, because these are the people who are going to be their clients in the long term.
Yeah.
But we also want to challenge the focus on shareholder whims as opposed to the focus on corporates being responsible citizens that do the right thing for the long term. Right. This focus on quarter by quarter growth is truly undermining a focus on the long-term vision of the country, the working together between government, civil society, to make sure that our society deals with the legacy, the very legacy that has made some corporates so wealthy, is what the corporates need to work with government to transform that legacy so that South Africa can have every citizen showing up with their full talents, their skills, and that we build trust between the private and the public sector.
And you say leaders who rise to the demand of extraordinary crisis tend to be those willing to take the risk, to be creative, inventive and courageous. It's a very, very interesting perspective indeed. Doctor, we thank you very much for coming on. We've run out of time, but we get your take, your perspective. We appreciate it. Be well.
Thank you very much, and goodbye to your listeners.
All right, that was Dr. Mamphela Ramphele, co-founder of Reimagine South Africa. We're going to take a quick break.